So before I start the content, of course, I want to promote a little bit, so please next slide, a little bit about my background. I am from the Netherlands, from the lovely city of Groningen. I know that some people in this room have visited Groningen and are hopefully very much impressed as well. Just to give you a little bit of a background, we are a small town. I think Jogja is 2 million. 3 million. Okay, so we have 200,000, a little bit less. But we are lucky that we have natural gas reserves, which provides us with a solid income so we can do nice projects. We built the university in 1614 actually, so it's an old university in our perspective. We call it the oldest university of the Netherlands. I think I made this joke when I was here last year. There is one university in the Netherlands which is older, but that was founded while we were ruled by the Spanish. So we say that's a Spanish university. Our ratings, I put them on there. So the Shanghai rating 72, and this year we have the honor of having a Nobel Prize winner in Groningen. So I expect next year, I hope we will have a follow-up meeting, that we will be a top 50 university. That is our ambition. We are also a 4-star reference region for healthy aging, and healthy aging is a concept which is embraced in Groningen since 10 years now, where you look for what are the reasons why some people grow old in a very healthy way and others already have disease early in life. And that has been awarded a 4-star reference region by the European Union. The 4-star is the highest possible rating, so we are quite proud about that, and that also gives us good reasons to collaborate. Next slide, please. So my background is from the Biobank Knowledge and Expertise Center. We built on over 50 years of experience with biobanking in Groningen, and we have many experts that were involved in creating a biobank or managing a biobank in the past. And at some point in time we thought we have to make them into one group of experts and have one office that is involved with biobanking. So we created BIKE, the Biobank Knowledge and Expertise Center. And these are the reference details which you can look up later. Next slide, please. So just a little bit basics. Click on, please. One more. Everybody has a definition about what is a biobank. I don't think it is something worth debating about. I mean, basically this is an example of my opinion about what is a biobank, but there are many. Two important components. One is the samples, the biological samples. The other one is the data. So that's the two pictures that I put in here. And I think it's very important that it's an infrastructure that serves scientific research. And of course that you collect it in an open way so that you do not yet know what is the research question that we're going to study. So that's my definition. Next slide, please. There are of course many different types. Maimouna already mentioned this, so I'll skip that to get earlier to the coffee. Next slide, please. But the main purpose is how you get from ready-made. I don't know if this is a familiar brand, but it's not very personal. So this is from ready-made to, next one, the personal made, the tailor-made. And I think this is where biobanking can really play an essential role in how do we move from one size fits all to truly personalized medicine in society, because this is one of the problems we have. There are many things already personalized in medicine in where I come from in the Netherlands. Is it working? Keep it a little bit closer. Okay, I'll do my best, and please attend. Okay. So we have personalized medicine in the Netherlands, no problem, but it's extremely expensive. So basically, personalized medicine is there for people living in high welfare countries with complex diseases. Usually, I mean, cancer is a great example of a field which has really moved into personalized medicine, but never at low costs. So what's personal about it? I don't know. I think it's really high welfare and not really having the impact yet that we want, that we need as a society. So although biobanks have to lead to personalized medicine, I think there is a very, very long road ahead. Next slide, please. So I was asked to talk a little bit about sustainability. And this is the biggest challenge, I think. I mean, Maimouna, you mentioned that funding is the one thing that is something that the biobank cannot create. So I will tell you a little bit about the value aspects of samples in biobanks. But in advance, I can already apologize for the fact that there is no one size fits all. So also here, you'll have to be creative. Next slide, please. I'll use a case study. This is a very old project that we had in the Netherlands. The Vlachtwedde Vlaardingen project. This is started 50 years ago and ran for 30 years. It was the first Dutch population-based biobank. It ran in 2 villages. One was under the smoke of a large industrial city, and the other one was in a remote rural area with a lot of cows, windmills. They used the wooden shoes, and they thought, well, let's study the differences between the two. If you grow up under the smoke, probably your heart and lungs are affected. If you grow up rurally, then probably you're healthy. The different outcome was quite disappointing because they found that pesticides, for instance, have also great impact on your health. And in the small rural villages, they had a lot of psychological problems, isolation. But anyway, the latest PhD defense based on these samples and data was done in 2015. So that is 50 years after the start. And what they actually did with these samples, which still are in the freezers today, they did GWAS studies on it. So imagine 1965, this is 50 years ago, having a sample. Who could have ever predicted GWAS studies in 1965? This is so far ahead of its time. But the blood collected there, the DNA of course, very stable. The freezing conditions, hopefully well maintained. So they were able to do GWAS studies on that, which was impossible at the time. So that just goes to show you that it's a long-term investment. And the meeting today was opened by somebody from the UGM that is involved in finance on a high position. I had hoped to impress him about this little fact here, but unfortunately he's not here yet. I will talk with him if he comes back with the coffee or whatever. Yes, thank you. And this was funded through institutional funding, governmental funding, and some charity funding. Next slide, please. So this is an example, and what we did here was, and I have to admit I was not involved yet, neither was I born. This is to show you some of the images that were done in this research. And I hope that you can see that basically what we're doing here, I'll be professional about this, is that we use standardized methods. This is to measure the blood pressure, and the nice thing is that at that time this was very innovative, very new. Nobody was doing blood pressure on with a device. I mean, you have a stethoscope. So what do you need fancy devices for? But they were standardized. They did X-ray photos according to protocol. They did lung function tests, and even the blood drawing, although this doesn't really look modern anymore. This was very modern for the time, and it was well standardized. So everybody collected the samples in the same way, which led to the fact that the results are still valid even today. And I hope that this is one of the take-home messages for you. Whatever you do, make sure that you are working according to well-defined standard operating procedures every step of the way. And that will be a central theme for these 2 days. We will come back to that more often. Next slide, please. So in the end, I mean, unfortunately, it's all about the money. If we look at biobanks, who pays for it? Governments pay for it. Institutions pay for it. Sometimes the researcher is able to get some research grant and is able to pay for it. Charities, I don't know if that is a typical source of income for you as a researcher here, but in the Netherlands it is. The NGOs, not too much, but and industry. And I'll come back to industry a couple of times because I don't know how is the interaction with industry in Indonesia. Sorry, I'll give you a mic.
Other from yes, ethics. Yeah. No, ethics committee. I think it's we don't know. Anyway, now still we are work on the not in the case of CSR, but in industry. Just I told you before, there's a usually they can support us as a researcher in the CSR.
So what we find in the Netherlands is that the general population really is quite scared about sharing samples with industry on the one hand, and on the other hand we want better medicines, better medical devices, better treatments in any way, and all of this innovation comes from industry. So we are in a dilemma here because on the one hand you want to create better drugs, but we have to find ways to either communicate properly to society or not work with pharmaceutical companies. But how do you make better drugs without pharma? This is a dilemma that we face. So when speaking about it's all about the money, in the end the collaboration with industry is very important, but requires good communication and good education about what is the true value of innovation to your society, to your inhabitants, to all the inhabitants of Indonesia. Then the second thing is, what about the conditions? Because as an example, I come from the UMCG and Lifelines. Lifelines is a large population-based cohort, 167,000 people come in every 5 years. We got a funding from the government and from institutional and from charities, and this was a one-time funding which lasts for a number of years. And then after this funding period, what happens? It's zero. So as time progresses, in the beginning, of course, you build up this cool freezer facility, all these locations where people can come in and get their blood drawn and the urine collected, and everything is fine, and the world and the sun shines. And time goes by and people start using the samples, which is of course what we all did it for. And then slowly you're thinking like, well, now it's 2 more years, what are we going to do next? I mean, we don't want to stop, we want to continue. This is great work, this is very important. Dear government, please give us more money. And then they look at you and they think, well, I did that before, and now you're here back again, so why would I give you more money? You're just going to spend it. I want to see what you've done with it. I want to see the innovation. I want to see public health is better now. So unless I can convince government about the promise of healthier people, less cost in medical, the Ministry of Health, then they're going to say, well, I mean, you tried it, didn't work. Good luck. So we look for structural funding, but in the end we get one-time research grants available there. It's high. So this is my currency, the euro. I put in a big one there because government and charities can give large amounts of funding in the Netherlands. But they already gave you money the first time, so you have to think of a new way to engage them. In the Netherlands, for instance, e-health is very important, mobile health. This is a new topic that government wants to spend millions of euros on, no problem. But if you look at basic medicine, they say, well, that's so old-fashioned, that's so last year, we don't fund that anymore. So you take the same project, you reframe it, you take a little bit of a changed ambition, and then you say, this is how we did it for 10 years, and this is how we do it for the next 10 years, which is modern, new, in line with the ambitions of the government. The same goes for the charities. They want modern, new projects. They don't give financing for old projects. I switch. This one is better. Every time I keep it close, it's better. Yeah. Then there are the users, of course. So you create a biobank. For what purpose? The purpose is using the samples that are in your biobank. And the only way to get them used if people from academia or industry know about your biobank. If they don't know about it, they will collect the same sample in a different institution and pay for them. So it's important that you communicate. And what do you communicate? Not only what you have, but also the successes. So if you have a biobank and somebody uses your samples and does a nice publication, put it on the website, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook, make sure that the world knows that your biobank was essential in creating this new knowledge, this cool publication that was based on your materials. Because as a contributor, you will not be properly recognized. In the New England Journal of Medicine, the authors are the ones that get all the credits. But they are the top 10 people out of 1,000 people that have made it possible. So you need to fight to be recognized. Then there is a smaller euro for sponsoring and philanthropy. As Lifelines, for instance, we have a program where we invite companies to sponsor Lifelines. This is a one-time sponsoring, no strings attached. They don't get anything other than that they get their logo on our website. And this is important because that is for them a way to do societal relevant things. So, but the amounts of money is small. And then there's a tiny one that's participants. So if you do a population-based study, some people may want to be more extensively screened than we can offer. The government has paid for a certain number of examinations, but maybe somebody wants to do more and is willing to pay for it. Then you invite them to also be a contributor in that way. Low impact. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what are the value containing things? So first of all, you have your donor. Your donor is as good as the informed consent that he or she signed. This is the beginning of everything, is what can I do with the samples? Informed consent. If you do not have a proper informed consent, then many collaborations will actually stop there. So think about this when you look at your own structure. Having a good informed consent will save a lot of research opportunities. So then there's the donor itself. Is he a healthy participant or a basic diseased participant, a patient? That is standard. If you look at, if I would like to do research on a diabetic population, finding type 2 diabetes patients is not very difficult. They are all over the world. Then we need to look at something which is a little bit more unique. So maybe there is an element of disease progression. So we have a type 2 diabetic that through time becomes a type 1 diabetic, for instance. That is a patient that has unique characteristics. It has a unique selling point. So something that makes that patient unique. And if you have collected samples before disease progression, you have a unique sample. Because you can always ask some researcher, how will you get to such a sample? What do you need to get from anybody a sample from a before disease progression to a after disease progression? That is something that biobanks are unique in. So ask your researcher, what would you need to get such a sample? And you'll find that they think like, well, I don't know. How did you get it? Treatment response or new onset disease. So especially in the healthy participants, if we look at new onset disease, that's a very important group. I'll get to that in a bit. Next slide, please. Then there's the sample, which is of course a very critical component. I already spoke a little bit about quality aspects. So it is crucial that quality is the factor which makes it durable, which makes it usable after a longer time. The difference between a biobank and a collection of bodily materials put in a freezer for somebody to use in some point in time is a biobank knows the quality aspects of the samples. If you don't know this, then you don't really add value. So all these quality aspects that we will talk about in these 2 days, please use them as much as you can. Then more aspects like the age, how long have you stored the material. The longer it's stored under good conditions, usually the more value it is created. The type of material and if you have repeated samples. So if you have repeated samples, the initial sample will have more value because you can do measurements over time or repeated measurements. Next slide, please. Then there's the related data. Also here, of course, your quality aspects need to be in line. But there you have the relevance and the diversity. So if you have a biological sample and you have 5 data units related to that sample, then there's not a lot of research that we can do. However, if you have, in Lifelines for instance, we have about 2,000 different phenotypes of one participant. So you have samples and 2,000 different data items that any researcher can think about, probably it's in there. And that sort of diversity is very important because researchers will come for questions which you did not anticipate. If the question could be anticipated, then probably it's already done somewhere else. But if it's not anticipated, you didn't think that they would use the data for that purpose. I'll give you an example. In Lifelines, we provided our data to the Faculty of Economics. And Lifelines is really a medical-based thing, but the Faculty of Economics thought, I think you are collecting things about people. And economics is also about people interacting with each other on an economic basis. And they did a research that if your grandfather was unemployed, the chances of you being unemployed increase like 3-fold or something. So we, as Lifelines, never thought about, unemployment analysis but the societal impact of this is very high. Because now we can do tailored programs on those people who have been unemployed, look at their children and their children's children, and make programs from the government particularly tailored for them, because they need help. So this is an impact that we never would have foreseen, but just to show you that the relevance, the diversity of data is really very important factor. Next slide, please. Then there is a very crucial component. We are here as a group of people who are looking for collaboration, right? The most important thing about the value of a biobank is the management of the biobank itself. The willingness to share, the willingness to collaborate, this is the most important thing. If you are unable to collaborate, you will do nice research with your own research group. Have fun. But you will never be a truly great investigator or researcher unless you pool your data, you pool your samples, you think about what can we do together, and then you will find that there are many more opportunities. So the willingness to collaborate and share by the biobank is a very important value of a biobank. The public-private research opportunities, also a crucial component. Some biobanks in the Netherlands, for instance, are not willing to share with industry. That is a fact, and that is a fact that is very difficult to understand. But then again, it's up to them. They make their own choices. I hope that you will investigate your own opportunities, and especially what can industry do together with you. I think it creates great opportunities. Your informed consent, however, is crucial in collaborating with industry. So also there, make sure that your informed consent is properly reviewed and that it is of good quality. And the last one, communicate your successes. So if you do a good research, or somebody uses your samples and does some interesting research, make sure that you let the world know that it was based on your samples. In your data material transfer agreement, or the contract that you make with people that you send your samples to, make sure that you get also rights to claim the communication parts of the research. I mean, if they do the science, if they do all the real intelligent work, then of course the IP, the intellectual property, is theirs. You only provided the sample of good quality, you only provided the data of good quality, and they did something that you never thought of. Okay, so they are the owners of the intellectual property because they were applying their intellect to get to that point. But still, they used your materials, so you have rights to the success as well. Not financial rights, but I mean, they have to, give you something to use the samples, but the communication is also very important. Next slide, please. So, no one size fits all. Sorry for that. I had hoped, but no, it's not there. Sorry. I'll clean it up later. So you need to balance between your own goals and sustainability. So ideally you want to do research which is totally in line with your own ambition, but maybe that will limit your opportunities. So think about that. Do not sell your samples if there is nothing in it for you, but a few rupiah is not interesting. You have to have some sort of, you need to get something back. If it is not research, then it's promotional, communication, or other things. Don't sell it for nothing, or only money. And ask the people coming to you, if you would need such a sample, how will you collect it? I mean, what would it take for you to collect a similar sample? How unique is my asset? Next slide, please. And I give you an example from the Lifelines cohort. So the first point is the baseline, and we collected in healthy participants. So some people have dementia, or some people have Parkinson's disease at baseline, but not a lot. And those are not interesting samples. Because if I go to a CNS specialist and I ask them, do you have a group of 80 Parkinson patients? He says, yes, sure. You want samples? No problem. I'll have hundreds. no problem. But then the next step, as an example, the Parkinson disease goes from 80 to 125. So now we have 45 new patients who have developed Parkinson. And if you go to a CNS expert and you say, how many samples do you have of a patient from before they had Parkinson? And then he's like, well, no, I only have Parkinson, but I have great Parkinson samples. Yeah, sure, but no, but I need them from before, because I want to predict what people develop this disease. I want to see if there's a biomarker that can predict early development. So can you give me a sample from somebody who is now a Parkinson patient of you from before they were your patient? And hardly, well, they don't have it, of course. So this just goes to show you that you need to think about, if somebody comes for samples, what would it take them to create such a sample themselves? And sometimes it is really impossible. So this shows you something that particular sample doctors cannot provide you with. And that's the nice thing, because they want to do research on it, so we can facilitate really interesting research. Next slide, please. I'll skip this one, actually. Next one. So to conclude, first of all, and I will repeat this in my next presentations tomorrow as well, biobanking is a long-term investment. It still is valid after 50 years. And I challenge anybody who can mention a research infrastructure that still is valid after 50 years and still creates PhDs. So, and now I have put a very long sentence, but it's a little bit of a joke. Sustainability is a non-predictable parameter. It will guarantee sleepless nights as the funding decreases and the deadline comes closer for further funding. But it can be influenced by creating collaborative successes. If you can create success and communicate about it, you will find that funding becomes more easy. You need to involve all stakeholders, and stakeholders come from very many different places. It is the patient, population, government, institution, fellow researchers, non-fellow researchers from different domains. Well, I mean, it's very broad, and it involves industry. If you want to do innovative research and apply it to society, translate it to society, we need industry to implement it. And they will make a profit out of it, okay, but we will get better health. So, please. That concludes my talk. I want to do a small bit of self-promotion. I'll do it one time only. We have an annual summer school in Groningen. Eri attended it 2 years ago, 2015, so 2 summer schools ago. Next slide, please. It's a 5-day fundamentals course on biobanking. We think it's very nice, but it also gives you a great learning and networking experience, and I hope that Eri can agree to that. So 2 more clicks then, and then we're done. That's 1, and that's 2. This is the class of 2016.
Applause for both Maimuna and Bart in our discussion.